Chapter 25 of The Professor. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. Chapter 25, Part 2. No, monsieur, I'd have courage to live out every throe of anguish fate assigned me, and principle to contend for justice and liberty to the last. I see you would have made no patient Grizzle. And now, supposing fate had merely assigned you the lot of an old maid, what then? How would you have liked celibacy? Not much, certainly. An old maid's life must doubtless be void and vapid, her heart strained and empty. Had I been an old maid, I should have spent existence in efforts to fill the void and ease the aching. I should have probably failed, and died weary and disappointed, despised and of no account, like other single women. But I'm not an old maid, she added quickly. I should have been, though, but for my master. I should never have suited any man but Professor Crimsworth. No other gentleman, French, English, or Belgian, would have thought me amiable or handsome, and I doubt whether I should have cared for the approbation of many others, if I could have obtained it. Now I have been Professor Crimsworth's wife 8 years, and what is he in my eyes? Is he honourable, beloved? She stopped, her voice was cut off, her eyes suddenly suffused. She and I were standing side by side. She threw her arms round me, and strained me to her heart with passionate earnestness. The energy of her whole being glowed in her dark and then dilated eye, and crimsoned her animated cheek. Her look and movement were like inspiration. In one there was such a flash, in the other such a power. Half an hour afterwards, when she had become calm, I asked where all that wild vigour was gone, which had transformed her erewhile, and made her glance so thrilling and ardent, her action so rapid and strong. She looked down, smiling softly and passively. I cannot tell where it is gone, monsieur, said she, but I know that whenever it is wanted, it will come back again. Behold us now at the close of the 10 years, and we have realized an independency. The rapidity with which we attained this end had its origin in 3 reasons. Firstly, we worked so hard for it. Secondly, we had no encumbrances to delay success. Thirdly, as soon as we had capital to invest, 2 well-skilled counsellors, one in Belgium, one in England, viz. Van den Hooten and Hunsden, gave us each a word of advice as to the sort of investment to be chosen. The suggestion made was judicious, and being promptly acted on, the result proved gainful. I need not say how gainful. I communicated details to Messrs. Van den Hooten and Hunsden. Nobody else can be interested in hearing them. Accounts being wound up, and our professional connection disposed of, we both agreed that as Mammon was not our master, nor his service that in which we desired to spend our lives, as our desires were temperate and our habits unostentatious, we now had abundance to live on, abundance to leave our boy, and should besides always have a balance on hand, which, properly managed by right sympathy and unselfish activity, might help philanthropy in her enterprises, and put solace into the hand of charity. To England we now resolved to take wing. We arrived there safely. Frances realized the dream of her lifetime. We spent a whole summer and autumn in travelling from end to end of the British Isles, and afterwards passed a winter in London. Then we thought it high time to fix our residence. My heart yearned towards my native county of Shire, and it is in Shire I now live. It is in the library of my own home I am now writing. That home lies amid a sequestered and rather hilly region, 30 miles removed from X, a region whose verdure the smoke of mills has not yet sullied, whose waters still run pure, whose swells of moorland preserve in some ferny glens that lie between them the very primal wildness of nature, her moss, her bracken, her bluebells, her scents of reed and heather, her free and fresh breezes. My house is a picturesque and not too spacious dwelling, with low and long windows, a trellised and leaf-veiled porch over the front door, just now on this summer evening looking like an arch of roses and ivy. The garden is chiefly laid out in lawn, formed of the sod of the hills, with herbage short and soft as moss, full of its own peculiar flowers, tiny and star-like, embedded in the minute embroidery of their fine foliage. At the bottom of the sloping garden there is a wicket, which opens upon a lane as green as the lawn, very long, shady, and little frequented. On the turf of this lane generally appear the first daisies of spring, whence its name, Daisy Lane, serving also as a distinction to the house. It terminates, the lane I mean, in a valley full of wood, which wood, chiefly oak and beech, spreads shadowy about the vicinage of a very old mansion, one of the Elizabethan structures, much larger as well as more antique than Daisy Lane, the property and residence of an individual familiar both to me and to the reader. Yes, in Hunsden Wood, for so are those glades and that grey building with many gables and more chimneys named, abides Yorke Hunsden, still unmarried, never, I suppose, having yet found his ideal, though I know at least a score of young ladies within a circuit of 40 miles who would be willing to assist him in the search. The estate fell to him by the death of his father 5 years since. He has given up trade, after having made by it sufficient to pay off some encumbrances by which the family heritage was burdened. I say he abides here, but I do not think he is resident above 5 months out of the 12. He wanders from land to land, and spends some part of each winter in town. He frequently brings visitors with him when he comes to shire, and these visitors are often foreigners. Sometimes he has a German metaphysician, sometimes a French savant. He had once a dissatisfied and savage-looking Italian, who neither sang nor played, and of whom Frances affirmed that he had tout l'air d'un conspirateur. What English guests Hunsden invites are all either men of Birmingham or Manchester, hard men, seemingly knit up in one thought, whose talk is of free trade. The foreign visitors, too, are politicians. They take a wider theme, European progress, the spread of liberal sentiments over the continent. On their mental tablets, the names of Russia, Austria, and the Pope are inscribed in red ink. I have heard some of them talk vigorous sense; yea, I have been present at polyglot discussions in the old oak-lined dining-room at Hunsden Wood, where a singular insight was given of the sentiments entertained by resolute minds respecting old northern despotisms and old southern superstitions. Also, I have heard much twaddle, enounced chiefly in French and Deutsch, but let that pass. Hunsden himself tolerated the drivelling theorists; with the practical men he seemed leagued hand and heart. When Hunsden is staying alone at the Wood, which seldom happens, he generally finds his way 2 or 3 times a week to Daisy Lane. He has a philanthropic motive for coming to smoke his cigar in our porch on summer evenings. He says he does it to kill the earwigs amongst the roses, with which insects, but for his benevolent fumigations, he intimates we should certainly be overrun. On wet days, too, we are almost sure to see him. According to him, it gets on time to work me into lunacy by treading on my mental corns, or to force from Mrs. Crimsworth revelations of the dragon within her, by insulting the memory of Hofer and Tell. We also go frequently to Hunsden Wood, and both I and Frances relish a visit there highly. If there are other guests, their characters are an interesting study. Their conversation is exciting and strange. The absence of all local narrowness, both in the host and his chosen society, gives a metropolitan, almost a cosmopolitan